Steve McQueen drew his Colt in a blur and emptied 6 rounds into the target before the echo of the first shot had faded across the Paramount backlot. Then he looked at the legend sitting 30 feet away and spoke the truth that had been building between them for a decade. "I have the speed, Duke, but you have the ground." The orange light of the California sunset made both men look like monuments to different eras. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. October 1969. Paramount Studios backlot, Hollywood, California. The wooden facades of an Old West town stood silent in the golden hour, casting long shadows across the dusty street that had hosted 1,000 shootouts for 1,000 different cameras. Paint peeling from false storefronts that had served as banks, saloons, and sheriff's offices in countless productions. The air carried the scent of sage and the weight of an industry in transition. John Wayne, 62 years old, sitting on a hitching post, like he owned not just the set but the entire concept of Western heroism. Fresh from his Oscar triumph with True Grit, the performance that had finally given him recognition after 40 years of defining American masculinity on screen. Wearing his signature wide-brimmed hat and boots that had walked through more movie gunfights than any real gunfighter had faced, Steve McQueen, 39 years old, standing 30 feet away in the practice area between the saloon facade and sheriff's office. Coming off the massive success of Bullitt, the film that had established him as the coolest man alive and proven that a new kind of hero could dominate box office lists. Wearing a simple cotton shirt and jeans that somehow looked more dangerous than any elaborate costume. 2 different generations of Hollywood royalty meeting in neutral territory that belonged to both and neither. The afternoon had started when McQueen arrived for firearms training with the technical advisors who ensured authenticity in Western productions. Word had spread through the studio that Wayne was on the lot, reviewing dailies for his upcoming project. The kind of coincidental meeting that seemed destined rather than accidental. McQueen had been practicing for 20 minutes when Wayne appeared, settling onto the hitching post with the casual authority of someone who'd made every Western set feel like home territory. Not watching like a critic or competitor, but observing with the interest of a master craftsman studying different approaches to familiar challenges. "Afternoon, Duke," McQueen had said, acknowledging the presence of the man who'd defined Western film before McQueen had learned to walk. "Steve," Wayne replied, his voice carrying that distinctive cadence that had narrated American values for an entire generation. "Heard you were working on your quick-draw technique. Staying sharp. You never know when a role might demand it. Good philosophy. Mind if I watch? Honor to have you." For the next 10 minutes, McQueen demonstrated the quick-draw skills that had taken years to develop. Clean, efficient movement that prioritized speed without sacrificing accuracy. Each draw practiced with intensity that understood authenticity, separated great performances from adequate ones. The Colt appeared in his hand like materialization rather than movement. Muscle memory executing patterns burned into his nervous system through dedication beyond professional requirement. 6 shots fired in rapid succession, each bullet finding center mass. Technical perfection demonstrated with casual competence that made superhuman ability look effortless. Wayne watched in silence. No commentary, no advice. Just the focused attention of someone who recognized professional competence regardless of stylistic differences. "That's fine work, son," Wayne finally said, his tone carrying genuine respect. "Real fine work." McQueen holstered his Colt. "Thank you. Coming from you, that means something. How long you been working on that technique?" 3 years. Daily practice when I'm preparing for Western roles. Couple hours a day when I'm not. Shows. You've got speed that most actors never develop. Most real gunfighters never developed. McQueen walked closer to where Wayne sat like a monument to cinematic history. "Duke, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When you approach Western roles, do you focus on the quick-draw aspect?" Wayne considered the question with a thoughtfulness that came from 4 decades of playing men who settled disputes with weapons. "Some, but not primarily." "What do you focus on?" "Presence, authority. Making the audience believe that drawing the weapon is unnecessary, because the man carrying it can't be beaten by anything as simple as superior speed or technical skill. McQueen nodded slowly, understanding that Wayne was describing something that transcended athletic ability. Psychological intimidation, confidence that comes from inner certainty, from representing principles that can't be compromised or values that won't bend under pressure. Gunfights aren't won by the fastest draw, son. They're won by the man who knows he's already won before anyone reaches for leather. Because he's fighting for something bigger than personal survival. That's a completely different approach from mine. Different times call for different approaches. Your style works for modern audiences who appreciate technical skill and athletic ability, who want to see heroes who can do things they can't do. My style works for audiences who want to believe in unshakable moral authority, who need to see heroes who represent things they want to believe in. Both valid approaches to screen heroism, both necessary. Hollywood's big enough for different kinds of heroes. Always has been. But the audience decides which kind they need in any given era. McQueen drew his weapon again. This time not for practice, but to demonstrate the speed that had become his trademark. The Colt appeared in his hand like magic, lined up on the target, ready to fire in a motion that human eyes could barely track. Wayne watched without visible reaction. No surprise. No judgment. Just professional assessment of professional capability. 0.4 seconds, McQueen said, reholstering. Fastest I've ever recorded. Impressive. But you're not impressed, are you? Wayne smiled with the warmth reserved for someone he genuinely respected. Steve, I'm impressed by the dedication it took to develop that skill, the hours of practice, the commitment to authenticity. But speed alone doesn't win gunfights. And it doesn't win audiences. What does? Conviction. The audience has to believe that you'll do what needs doing when it needs doing, regardless of the cost. They have to believe that backing down isn't in your vocabulary. McQueen looked at the targets he'd been practicing against, clean holes punched through paper with mechanical precision. And you think my approach lacks conviction? I think your approach demonstrates one kind of conviction. Technical mastery, athletic achievement, commitment to craft. And your approach demonstrates different conviction? Moral certainty, unshakable principles. The kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself because it simply is. Wayne stood up from the hitching post. At 6 feet 4 inches, he dominated the space around him without effort. Not threatening. Just present with the authority that came from representing something larger than individual capability. Steve, you draw faster than anyone I've ever seen. Actors, stuntmen, real gunfighters, that's genuine skill that deserves recognition. Thank you. But when audiences watch Western films, they're not really watching gunfights. They're watching tests of character, and character isn't measured by speed. What's it measured by? By what a man stands for, what he won't compromise, what he'll sacrifice to do right, even when doing right costs him everything. McQueen practiced one more draw. Perfect technique executed with flawless precision. Then he looked at Wayne with those pale blue eyes that had made him famous. Duke, I understand what you're saying about character. But doesn't technical skill contribute to authentic character portrayal? Absolutely, technical skill serves character. But when technical skill becomes the focus instead of character, the performance loses something essential. Which is soul. The thing that makes audiences care about what happens to the character instead of just admiring what the actor can do. Wayne walked to the practice area with measured steps that seemed to claim ownership of every square inch of ground they touched. Positioned himself where McQueen had been demonstrating his lightning-fast technique. But he didn't draw his weapon or assume any particular stance or prepare for any technical demonstration. Watch this, Wayne said, his voice carrying that distinctive cadence that had narrated American values for generations. He just stood there, feet planted like tree roots grown deep into American soil. Hands relaxed at his sides, completely at ease but somehow suggesting that relaxation came from strength rather than complacency. No dramatic posturing or technical positioning or calculated intimidation. Just a man occupying space with complete confidence that the space belonged to him by right rather than conquest. The air around him seemed to change quality. The entire backlot felt smaller, as if his presence had compressed everything else into supporting roles. He didn't need to demonstrate speed or skill because he radiated something more fundamental, the absolute certainty that whatever needed doing, he could do it. After 10 seconds of stillness that felt like ceremony, he spoke. "How fast was that draw, son?" "You didn't draw." "Exactly. But did you feel like you were in the presence of someone who could outdraw you if necessary?" McQueen considered the question honestly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you carry yourself like someone who's never lost a gunfight." "Right. Not because of any technical demonstration. Because of presence that doesn't require demonstration. You're saying that confidence is more important than skill. I'm saying that real confidence comes from something deeper than skill. It comes from knowing who you are and what you represent, regardless of external circumstances. McQueen drew his weapon one final time. Not for practice or demonstration, but as a gesture of respect for the conversation they'd been having. "Duke, your presence fills this entire set. Even when you're just sitting on a hitching post. Thank you. And my speed is faster than anyone's ever recorded. But your presence is something speed can't compete with." Wayne nodded with understanding that went beyond professional courtesy to genuine mutual recognition. "Steve, you represent something important in modern filmmaking: skill, dedication, athletic ability applied to character development. And you represent something else: stability, moral certainty. The kind of strength that doesn't change with fashion or circumstance. Both necessary, both essential. Audiences need heroes who can do things they can't do, but they also need heroes who represent things they want to believe in." The sun was setting now, casting the wooden facades in golden light that made them look like monuments to American mythology rather than movie sets. Both men understanding that they were participants in that mythology as much as its creators. "Steve," Wayne said as he prepared to leave the practice area, "you've developed something remarkable, speed that most people couldn't achieve with a lifetime of practice. I appreciate that, but remember that speed serves story, and story serves something larger than entertainment. Which is hope, faith in human capability, and moral courage. The belief that good men can triumph over evil circumstances through dedication and principle." McQueen holstered his Colt for the final time that afternoon. "Duke, I've learned something today." "What's that?" "I've learned that there are different kinds of power in this business and different kinds of respect." "Meaning?" "Meaning that technical skill can earn professional admiration. But moral authority earns something deeper. Such as trust. The audience's trust that you represent something they can believe in, not just something they can admire." Wayne extended his hand. The gesture of one professional acknowledging another's dedication and competence. "Steve, it's been an honor watching you work." "Honor's been mine, Duke." "Keep practicing that draw. It's impressive skill that serves your characters well." "I will. But I'll also remember what serves the characters better." "Which is?" "Understanding what they stand for, what they won't compromise, what they represent beyond their technical capabilities." The two men shook hands in the fading light of a California evening that had witnessed the meeting of two different approaches to the same fundamental challenge, representing heroism on screen with enough authenticity to make audiences believe in possibilities beyond their daily experience. Wayne walked toward his car, each step measured and purposeful. McQueen remained in the practice area, understanding that he'd received instruction that went beyond quick-draw technique to the essence of screen presence. As the Duke reached his vehicle, he turned back one final time. "Steve?" "Yes, sir?" "Your speed is remarkable, really, but don't let it become more important than what the speed serves." "I won't." "Good, because audiences don't remember the fastest draw. They remember the man behind the draw. Wayne drove away, leaving McQueen alone with the targets and the equipment, and the understanding that true screen legend required more than athletic ability or technical mastery. It required representing something that transcended individual capability to embody collective aspiration. Steve McQueen drew his Colt in a blur and told John Wayne, "I have the speed, but you have the ground." Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.